Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast. This is the Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. Today's guest is certainly an expert in technology, and I'm very interested to hear what he's got to say as far as moving into the tax realm, but also some opinions and thoughts, because he's been around technology for a very long time. His name is David Deputy. He's the Director of Strategic Development and Emerging Markets and the President of Accounting Blockchain Coalition, working with Vertex at the moment. David, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
Mate, I'm truly fascinated. I've spoken to York, I think he's one of the directors within one of your companies. So I'm very fascinated to hear your point of view, because the conversation I had with York, who's the head of blockchain at Microsoft, was really, really fascinating, how he got in and where he's come from. And I think we're going to have an equally interesting conversation as well, mate. Do you want to just give us a little bit of an introduction on yourself, just so everybody's got a bit of a background as to who you are and where you've come from?
Sure. I guess I grew up through the finance industry. Was a bank regulator for a little while, went back and got an MBA, and then found that I really loved the technology aspects, so shifted my career into the technology stuff and tended to stay on the cutting edge, database applications, got into big data, a little bit of AI, and found my way into tax and blockchain here over the last decade.
Yeah, okay. I mean, one of the things that we had a brief chat prior to hitting record, guys. So I got to hear a little bit of a story about how you got into blockchain. And it's very similar to, I think, a lot of people that came into the space. Would you like to just let everybody know what you told me? Just let them know how you got into the space.
Sure. I guess if you go back in the heyday of the .com, I was in San Francisco and had a company called TrustNet. And we built a centralized digital currency for gift giving, but a competitor launched before us, and they got hacked by Russian hackers, it turns out. Funny, history repeats. Anyway, so they crashed and burned. They lost 50 million. And so we had no opportunity to launch. We just shut it down and moved on. So I've always been interested in monetary theory and money and how money's created. But I kind of ignored the whole blockchain Bitcoin thing. Back then it was just Bitcoin, I guess, because of my experience there. I'm like, oh, that'll never fly. Somebody will hack it. It'll never work. And I guess around early 2016, I got an opportunity. I said, well, maybe this is real, because I saw the price movement. And I said, let me go to this conference in New York. It was the first consensus conference, which is a big CoinDesk conference in New York. And I went to the conference, and I expected it would be a bunch of hackers. It would be, a bunch of flip-flop, pierced noses, tattoos and such. And I walk in, and it's at the Marriott Times Square, and up on stage is Blythe Masters, who invented, J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, invented the collateralized derivative obligation, CDOs. And she's talking to like an executive VP of IBM. I mean, this is a suit conference. And so I came home, and it just so happened that my family was away for the weekend. It was a rainy weekend. And I dived in for like 18 hours of trying to understand this new phenomenon. And I went down the rabbit hole pretty deeply, and I was sold after that point. I was a crypto convert, if you will.
It's thanks for sharing that, mate. I think it's a great story, but it's also one that I think most of us can relate to. I know certainly I've been trading for 12 years now, and I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2013. And people say, "What do you think of Bitcoin? What do you think of Bitcoin?" And I'm like, "Well, what do I think of Bitcoin? I think very little of Bitcoin. I'm not a VC. I'm not a tech entrepreneur. I'm a trader. That's what I do. And at that stage, that's all that I focused on. So there's not enough volume. There's not enough tools for me to do what I need to do. I can't do it." Fast forward to mid last year. I've only been trading crypto for about 10, 11 months now, or actually might be getting close to 12 now. So very new for me to be trading crypto. However, I've been trading for 12 years. So I know what I'm looking for. And I got told by the right person to come and have a look. I said, "Cobby, you got to come and look at this market, mate. You can't ignore this any longer." And I was kind of like, well, this is coming from someone who I know and respect very, very well. So I kind of, the right person tells you the right thing, and you go and do it, right? You get
Right.
information from the good source, and you go and check it out. And then I was just like, wow, drop everything, get straight in. So that, we've all got our own little stories to how it happened. There was usually a cataclysmic event somewhere within our reading or our research that we just went, whoa, this is big. So really interesting to hear your side of that as well. Now with Vertex, I want to sort of dive into what you're doing there, because I'm sort of familiar with what it is that you do to a certain extent, but I'd like you to go into detail because I know I know you're not a tax expert per se, but you are in that space and you are an international company looking at those different areas of tax. You want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing there and how that can sort of help us within this space, and who's got the best ecosystem at the moment relative to blockchain?
Sure, sure. I'll probably punt on that last one because I don't want to play favorites. But from our perspective, we focus on transaction taxes. So that's sales taxes, or outside the U.S., it's VAT and what's called GST taxes. And not many people know it, but more money's raised from those taxes on a global basis than from income taxation. It is the predominant tax outside the U.S. I think Finland's got a 24% VAT tax, and Germany's 19.6. So you're talking a big chunk of change that comes out of each transaction for these VAT taxes. And so what we do is we automate those taxes. Our clients are clients like Amazon, Apple, eBay, Microsoft, Caterpillar, Procter & Gamble. So we allow them to pass the transaction to us, and we figure out what the tax is, no matter what it is, no matter what product it is or service, and no matter where it is on Earth. We cover 120 countries to get the tax right. So we help them comply with the government regulations. What we see in the space is that the value exchange, which is the buying and selling of stuff, historically has been done in e-commerce systems. It's been done in invoicing out of ERP systems. It's been done in billing systems, and those transaction executions are moving onto the blockchain. So we're taking our capabilities and bringing them to the blockchain so that you can be compliant if you choose to be. Our philosophy is there's going to be a white blockchain, there's going to be a black blockchain, or at least shades of gray in between. So, the Moneros of the world, completely anonymous, used for whatever reason they are used for. There's a role for those. I'm a bit of a libertarian myself, so I believe that that's important to maintain. But there's also the opportunity to be compliant. So if you're, a resident of a jurisdiction, you're buying and selling stuff, you have an obligation to pay taxes, and businesses have the obligation to collect and remit on behalf of the government. So if you want to be compliant, you should have the opportunity to be compliant. And that's what we're focused on.
So you say 120 different countries. There's a lot of work, obviously, that you must have a very large team of people working on the ground in each of these jurisdictions, or at least research teams. What are you finding at the moment? I know you don't want to play. I know you don't want to play favorites, okay? But is there at the moment governments in certain areas of the world? I'm sure that there are. So what areas are we seeing that seem to be quite forward this technology? I'm not just talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as such. I'm talking about blockchain. I mean, we know that some parts of the world have sort of shut things down or shut things up, and they're now starting to reconsider. Some countries are leading. As far as from the tax point of view, what countries are you sort of seeing as leaning a little bit more towards perhaps being more crypto blockchain friendly than others?
Well, that's a great question. And I do fly around the world talking to the heads of tax administrations at various governments. And they're really behind the financial side. So, the monetary authorities are really far in advance in terms of sandboxes and stuff in areas like, Malta, Singapore, Dubai. So we're seeing the tax administration lag behind them. But we're also seeing a lot of money being invested by the EU and by various nation states in adopting blockchain for government processes. And these are everything from identity to voting. So the governments are going in a big way. The U.S. government's got a group that's organized around this as well as the state governments. So the governments are getting their feet wet in other domains, but it's just a matter of time before they turn their attention to tax because, hey, you follow where the money flows, right? So it's very similar to the digital economy, what they call the digital economy, which is traditional e-commerce. It went on for quite a long time, and the governments really didn't care about it because it was small. All of a sudden, it got so big over the last 3 or 4 years that they created an initiative called the Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. And Action 1 is to figure out what to do about e-commerce because they're losing so much money now. We see the same thing happening with the digitization of assets. and the cryptocurrencies. So this is going to get so big, the governments cannot ignore it anymore, and they'll turn their attention to it. So we want to be prepared to help businesses comply easily, to automate the compliance using the blockchain to automate compliance on the blockchain.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes sense. Absolutely. I mean, anyone who's been in the space for a little while who has done extensive research understands that this is the future. It is not going anywhere. You still get the people go, "How's that crypto going, Craig?" And it's like, well, it's going the way it's going. It's a developing, emerging technology. Next question, please. But you sort of said Singapore, Dubai, Malta. Now I know excuse me. I know a lot's going on in Malta at the moment, and Singapore. A lot of money in this space in Singapore. That's going to be very forward thinking. I was in Hong Kong recently, and in Hong Kong, there's a lot going on in that space that other countries outside of that sort of jurisdiction are not even aware of. They've got their own ecosystem within this ecosystem, which is quite fascinating. And in many cases, great projects doing great things, and they're doing them within China, for example, we don't even know about. So there's markets within markets that are just completely closed off to the rest of the world. And I mean, to give you an example of the technology and how governments are using it, from my point of view, I'm here in Sydney, Australia. And our government's just come out and released there's a health records on like a database type thing. And they said, look, you can opt out. And Australians are opting out in droves because our government sucks as far as technology goes. I mean, they've been hacked. They can't do online votes. It's just terrible. And everybody in crypto is going, they need the blockchain for this. This is what it should be used for, but they're still so far behind. So Australia, not really a leader, our government in that respect. Hopefully they pull their finger out and change a little bit. We're definitely seeing governments around the world sort of start to take a little bit more notice. And it's definitely interesting. Now, I want to know a little bit more about, I mean, you've worked in some big companies. I mean, Oracle is a place that you seem to have sort of walked in. You've been on a bit of a revolving door a couple of times by the look of it. I mean, you've been working with some big people there. You've obviously well connected globally and very well respected in the various fields that you've been inside of, and obviously tech's where your career has sort of been built around. How have you seen attitudes changing, or have you seen attitudes changing in the space of blockchain over the last 12 months? And if so, what's the sort of conversation that's starting now that might have just been discounted as, oh, no, it's just a lot of rubbish, maybe say 18 months ago? Are we seeing change? And is that change, what's the conversation that's coming of that?
Yeah, I think there's dramatic change in the last 12 months. Just as an example, just yesterday, I think it was announced that the Certified Financial Analyst exam now contains topics on crypto. So you're seeing this standardization of the knowledge around the crypto space. Enough of it has emerged that these large players are coming in from the financial sector. Announcements every day of a new hedge fund being created or a new bank. Turning from denying it to embracing it. Won't mention who. I think we all know.
Yeah, we know.
And so there's that on the financial side, and then you've got the technology side. You've got companies, like IBM, the Ethereum Alliance. You've got Corda. These technologies are still generally being used for proof of concepts, but a few of them are starting to execute live transactions with money at risk. So you've got the technology side maturing, and that's just accelerating. These are exponential technologies, and some of these networks have tens of thousands of developers contributing to them. So the pace at which this technology is going to evolve is going to blow everybody away. And the problem is the regulations were written, the 19th, or if we're lucky, in the 20th century. They can't keep pace with this. So we've got a real challenge. What I think is happening is you've had the fraud because of the lack of internal controls. You've had the regulators come in and crush markets. That's taken the asset value of the cryptocurrency space from $750 billion down to I think today it's around 290 billion. So you've seen this massive loss of value because of regulatory, on one hand, regulatory impact, on another, lack of regulations who allowed the fraud to happen. So the market's maturing. We see the regulatory oversight as a good thing. Obviously, we're in the industry, we're a reg tech company, but we see it as a very good thing. We welcome it. We think that the second coming of these crypto assets, beyond just digital currencies, all types of assets, physical assets being digitized, the title to them, We see that as a wave that's just going to sweep over the world because you can trust it. You can trust it from the technology, and soon you can trust it from the regulatory perspective.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you're president of the Accounting Blockchain Coalition. So you're sort of at the forefront of the coalface, so to speak, helping to mold and grow and work within the community to, I guess, look after the community, understand the community, and build it out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about? I just want to know more about the Accounting Blockchain Coalition and what its role plays.
Sure, I'll give you a little history. So, about 2 years ago, we had our first conference in New York. This is just a group of individuals coming together saying, hey, there's a gap in industry knowledge. We're professionals in the industry. Let's put a conference on, in New York, see what happens. We had 400 attendees. So then we did the second one this year. And at that conference, we formalized the organization. We're now a nonprofit, somewhat global, becoming global very rapidly, industry alliance dedicated to educating really businesses and governments and organizations on the accounting matters, those that are relevant to digital assets and distributed ledger technologies. So it's both. It's both the digital asset class and the distributed ledger technologies, including blockchain. So we don't create best practices because you can't create a best practice, then audit it. We've got a lot of auditors in our membership. So what we do is we disseminate the information, and I've been really pleased at the quality of the members that have joined. We've only been around for about 5 months now. We've got the who's who of the accounting and tax profession in our membership, and more piling in every day. It's an abundance mentality right now. There's plenty of work to go around, so we're sharing the knowledge within the industry to help those in our profession, accounting, tax, finance. We got a role to help advise business leaders on their fiduciary responsibilities and how to uphold those responsibilities appropriately in these new domains. And they don't have the knowledge. And if we don't have the knowledge, we're both in a bad place. So we're helping forge the second round of this knowledge in the industry, from just crypto to crypto and blockchain and internal controls, all those different areas.
So you're effectively bringing the accounting world up to speed. Is it sort of what the aim is?
Yeah, that's exactly what the aim is. So it's it's a by industry for industry initiative. It's a membership based organization that helps spread the knowledge within the industry. There's a huge gap here, and that's a dangerous gap because if you don't have the right internal controls, we've seen what can happen with the hacks on the exchanges. Just as a simple example. We've seen the impact of regulatory impact on the valuation of these assets and the risk that those who don't understand and some that do understand and rightfully believe there's risk here. So that's what we're focused on. We're really focused on, if you boil it down, we're focused on educating the industry to de-risk the industry. I guess that's not a term I've said before, but I think that fits.
Well, that's what we like to hear is de-risk. I mean, that's what every investor wants to know. Every business person who's in the space wants to look at anything to de-risk themselves, understand the space better, and if they can mitigate that risk as good as they possibly can. So look, we just talked about the Accounting Blockchain Coalition. I mean, who are you looking for in there? How do people get in contact with you? How do they join? What's the process?
Sure, great question. So the easiest way is to go to our website. It's accountingblockchain.net. And you'll see both information that we freely share with the public. So all the videos from our latest conference, and we've got the top speakers from the industry at this conference. They're freely available there under the events area. There's also how to become a member. There's a listing of the current membership, so you can see what class of companies. This is not an individual level this is an organizational level entity. So, a company joins, not an individual. And then everyone within your company can take advantage of the information. Join the working groups. We've got 4 different working groups. We've got a tax working group, a general regulatory working group, an audit and an accounting working group, and then an internal controls working group. And that's really where the power of the organization comes together for the benefit of our membership.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that are going to reach out to you. Maybe a lot of professionals within the listeners. Look, I ask every single person, every single guest that I have on, David, the same question each and every time to wrap up the show. So I'm going to ask you this question. So I'm going to put you on the spot. It's not a hard question. You'll be good. We really see blockchain and compared to the internet. Look, it's a new technology. A lot's happening. It's going to change the face of how we do business, how we operate as a human species. From my perspective, and a lot of people that are in the space, I think we all agree on that. Now, with the internet, we looked at 1993 sort of being not the beginning of the internet, but when it started to really sort of gain some traction. We saw 2000 being the explosion of the .com and the boom that we saw there. Whereabouts do you think that we are right now within the blockchain space? 1993, 2000, or somewhere in the middle?
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I came back from Japan in 99 because I saw what was happening in San Francisco and said I wanted to be a part of it. We're certainly not there. We're probably 3 years before. So that puts me in 1996.
1996. All right. Then I'm good with that. Most people sit around 95, 96, and it depends how they look at it. But that's good. We're all in the same sort of boat. We've got plenty of time ahead. You're a bit early. You're a bit earlier this time, mate. You weren't there 1999. You're here a bit earlier. So congratulations for being on the ship a little bit sooner this time.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen though is this is going to happen a lot faster than the internet. Hold on to your hats.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's the cycles are already insane. It's a very fast-paced market, and I couldn't agree with you more, David. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg,
for being here. So, David, Deputy Director in Strategic Development and Emerging Markets at Vertex, and the President of the Accounting Blockchain Coalition. A wonderful guest. Thanks so much for being here, guys, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Bye for now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast. Check out tradercobb.com because experience matters.